Man, my boy Carl Casey knocks it out of the park. I freaking love his music. He makes awesome freaking sounds, dude. Like perfect. Um there we go. Put the link a dink. There we go. All right. uh, I could probably afford to chill out for a little bit while I wait for people to show up. I really just want to just, you know, listen to music for a minute. Man, but these are so good. I love Carl Casey. Whitebelt Audio is absolutely the shit. Oh, that being said, I'm going to need it because this is a lot of like my playlist for working out and stuff. Because Monday, I've got 36 pounds to lose in 10 days. So that being said, let's get into this Mrballen, shall we? Um, Copy that link and put it in the stream info. Paste that. Update. Okay, that's all updated. Cool. So this is a request from the Discord. What's up, Commander Wolf? Up and about. Not sure how long I'll stay awake and up for. It's fine. It's fine. It's a stream, but it's going to get recorded anyway. But yeah, this is a request from Discord from Peekaboo Sue. Link in the description box or in the chat for the Discord link. But thank you, Peekaboo Sue. I appreciate it. From Mrballen. Top 10 bingeable scary stories. Horrifying final moments. Commander Wolf. All good. I'm glad to see you're enjoying your time on the server with the folks. All right, let's see how this goes. Agreed. Thank you, Sue. Yes, yes. Thank you, Peekaboo Sue, for the recommendation for me and you. And we're going to see this one through. Let's go. All right. It's so funny, though, because, anytime I think of Mrballen, there's a coincidence between he and I. We actually served in Afghanistan in the same exact region at the same exact time, and we were on the same fob and crossed paths a few times, and we both ended up on YouTube. Ain't that some funny shit? Coincidences. And what's funnier still is that apparently we were on some of the same missions. I didn't find that out until later. But yeah, friggin' hey, well anyway, let's get into it. I think my head's big enough.
Today, we have a very special bonus video for you guys. It's a collection of 10 fan favorite stories all about horrifying final moments. Now, these 10 fan favorites have all been completely re-edited for today's episode. So even if you have heard or seen some of them, just keep in mind, this will feel like a brand new viewing experience. But before we get into today's 10 stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to photos and videos, press the like button if you can quickly make a phone call on their phone. And when they hand it over, don't make a phone call and instead just permanently delete all their photos and videos. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications.
God, wouldn't that drive you nuts? Since everything's saved digitally nowadays. Wouldn't that suck? If someone took your devices and deleted all the photos and videos and shit? that would be terrible. That'd be an absolutely bad time.
So you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's 10 stories.
Love Mr. Bones' intro. Let's go. Oh, I forgot. We get copyrighted because of that bullshit. Fuck! You know what? Oh, well. Too bad, so sad. I'm not monetized anyway.
Mount Fuji is the highest mountain in Japan, rising up to 3,776 meters.
And it is a beautiful freaking mountain and landscape. I swear to God. And it's glorious. I don't know if it's just Japan, just specifically. But it's not the exact same feeling when I've been to like all of America's national monuments, right? Like our parks or nothing like that. It's not the same feeling. But when you get to like, you know, almost to the summit from Mount Fuji, and then you just look around, like, it seems so exquisite. YouTube ain't paying us anyways. Yeah, no, definitely not. But yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful land, beautiful people, beautiful women.
And it's actually a volcano. It's dormant. The last time it erupted was in 1707, but geologists still classify it as active. Tourists are allowed to climb Mount Fuji, but only between July and September, because in the winter months, the mountain gets completely treacherous. There's snow and ice, and the wind picks up. It's very, very dangerous, so it's off limits. Now, thrill seekers, if they really wanted to, they could climb Mount Fuji in the winter, because there isn't a security guard posted up at the bottom of Mount Fuji checking people in and out. It's on you. If you want to climb it when it's off limits, well, then you're climbing at your own risk, because basically it's a terrible idea. But if you have the right equipment and you have all the right training, it is doable. One thrill seeker, a 47-year-old named Tetsu, decided he wanted to hike Mount Fuji in the winter of 2019. He wanted to live stream his entire journey to the summit. Now, Tetsu might have been a thrill seeker, but he certainly
wasn't this the guy who was doing the because there was like a girl apparently that wanted to see what it looked like from Mount Fuji or on top of Mount Fuji or something about the view, but she was too sick to go and wouldn't be able to do it, so he live streamed it, climbing it for her or something like that. I think it's the same guy. I could be wrong though. It might be him.
Wasn't a mountain climber. He did not have the experience, nor did he have any of the equipment necessary for a climb up Mount Fuji in the winter. Wearing only street clothes and carrying nothing more than climbing poles and his smartphone, he turned on his live stream and he began hiking up the Shubashiri Trail. Viewers began tuning in as Tetsu happily made his way up this ash-covered trail, and then the ash turned into light snow, and then light snow turned into really heavy snow and ice and wind, and then Tetsu began complaining about how cold he was and how he couldn't feel his hands, and his viewers are egging him on to, keep going, keep pushing through it, and probably because of the pressure he felt from his viewers, he kept going when really this would have been the moment to turn around. When you're realizing that you don't have the right equipment and it's getting really cold and you're probably not even halfway up, that's the time to turn around, but he didn't. He pressed on. As he moved up the mountain,
yeah, I think it was him. because like he was live streaming it for someone in particular, if I remember this correctly. Um, which maybe it might have been him. But yeah, but because it's not like a specific like just video call or something, it's a live stream. Pretty much anyone can tune in. But yeah, like
The path he was on
unfortunate, but I mean he took the risk.
continued to narrow and become increasingly more covered in ice, and the guard fence that straddled the side of this path was getting to the place where it comes to a stop, signaling the most dangerous section of the hike, which is the last leg up to the summit. He gets to that point where the fence comes to an end, and now he's on this narrow stretch where the wind is just whipping across and it's all ice. And he's trying to walk across the ice with this totally inappropriate footwear. He should have had on at least crampons, the metal spikes that go on the bottom of your shoe to grip ice. He just had tennis shoes on, and so he's slipping and sliding as he's walking up this icy trail, and then he finally staggers and falls, but he catches himself. And you can hear him laughing on the live stream, joking with his audience how dangerous and slippery it is. And his viewers begin to change their tone a little bit, and they're like, hey, you might want to consider turning around now. But Tetsu is totally focused on getting to the top. So he stands back up and he continues to kind of shuffle his way towards the summit on this stretch of ice. He finally gets right up below the summit.
Man, he went through that whole ordeal. He gathered up all of his courage. You know, he finally overcame his fear. And then this shit has to happen. Like shit, dude. That sucks.
Where on his live stream you can actually see the top of Mount Fuji, and you can tell that his footwear at this point is basically not able to handle how slick it is. He's basically constantly stumbling, and you can see he notices a little stretch of small rocks that seem to almost make stepping stones up to the summit, and he begins walking over very carefully on the ice to try to use these rocks to get himself up to the top. And right as he's trying to step for one of these rocks, he loses his balance, and on camera he says, wait, I'm slipping, and then he falls and begins rocketing down the side of this mountain. Now, when you fall on a steep mountain, you have one, maybe two chances to self-arrest. So for example, if you had an ice pick and you were like Tetsu and you start falling, you would want to roll over and dig the head of that ice pick into the ground and basically anchor your knees and elbows and drive everything you can into the snow to stop yourself from falling. And so if you can't do that in one or two attempts, your momentum will pick up and you'll be going too fast and you won't be able to stop yourself. And then you just gotta hope you survive the fall. Tetsu
Pretty much. People severely underestimate ice and snow. They really do. And this guy had nothing with him to do that kind of shit with. Fuck, dude.
did not have an ice pick or any other tool to help him self-arrest, and he didn't have the training for what to do in a situation like this, so he didn't even attempt to roll over and dig his elbows or knees into the ground to try to slow down. So he just goes flying down the mountain, he's on his back, he's not slowing down, and he knows he's doomed. And he says on camera, well, it can't be helped, before he flies over the edge and falls hundreds of meters down to his death. His viewers who watched this happen alerted authorities, who found his body the next day over 1,000 meters away from where he had first fallen. Unfortunately, every year there is a handful of people that attempt to climb Mount Fuji in the winter, and they meet the same fate.
There's plenty who do it purposefully as well. Kind of like there's that dark forest, that people decide to go and cease existence in all the time. People treat Mount Fuji the same way, and just like they treat some of the bridges as well. Man, oh man. I've only fallen like 200 feet. 1,000 feet? Shit, dude. I couldn't imagine. I really couldn't.
In 1962, Chileno Sanchez was born into a poor family in the Mexican state of Sinaloa. When he was just 15 years old, one of his sisters was assaulted by a very rich and powerful man in their town, and so he never got punished for it. 2 years later, when Chileno was 17, he saw this man at a party, and he walked up to him and shot him in the head, killing him instantly. After the murder, Chileno fled to Tijuana before ultimately crossing the US border into Los Angeles, where he stayed with his aunt. He worked odd jobs like picking vegetables and selling cars before he ultimately went into business with his brother, who was back in Mexico, and he worked with him to smuggle Mexicans into the US. But that operation stopped in 1984 when his brother was murdered in Tijuana. To commemorate his brother, Chileno, who always loved music, wrote a song about him, and he formatted the song in the typical Mexican ballad style called corrido, but his lyrics were graphic and gritty, something nobody else did when they wrote a corrido. Chileno spoke honestly and openly not only about how his brother was killed, but also the struggles of living around drug trafficking and violence in Mexico. Shortly after writing the song, Chileno wound up in jail in Tijuana, Mexico, and while he was there, he would sing the song he wrote about his brother, and other inmates heard it and loved it. They had never heard a corrido sung like that, and so they asked Chileno if he would write songs about them and their exploits.
Seems how it usually starts. I mean, Jesus. You know, people used to give me shit for me saying that Mexico is a criminal country. It's not a joke. It's literally true. It is a criminal country. And Mexican culture has become a culture of criminality as like a mentality. So yeah, like it's not a joke, it's an actual fact.
Soon, Chileno was being commissioned by all these inmates in this prison to write their songs in exchange for money and for favors. When Chileno got out of prison, his unique songwriting abilities had spread beyond the prison walls to other criminals and drug traffickers and kingpins in Mexico, and before long, Chileno was being approached by those people to write their songs. His corridos pioneered a new subgenre of music called narco corrido for their ties to the narcotics industry. Some people today compare the style and lyrics of the narco corrido to gangster rap. By 1987,
Yeah, basically.
and Chileno's music was not just being shared amongst his paying clients. It had spread into Los Angeles and all over Mexico and was becoming very popular, even though it wasn't being played on the radio because radios thought his lyrics were too graphic. And so it was spreading largely because of word of mouth and because Chileno himself would go to car washes and street corners and he would sell his cassettes to anybody who would take them. By 1991, Chileno was so famous that he actually went on tour, and everywhere he went, the venue would be completely sold out. But given what his narco corridos were about, largely about drug trafficking and the people that are involved in that ecosystem, the people that would actually come to his performances were often rough and dangerous people, or were at least tied to rough and dangerous people. In 1992, when Chileno was performing in California, while he was on stage, this 33-year-old guy rushed onto stage with him and drew a gun on him, and Chileno, who was always carrying a weapon himself, drew his pistol and fired at this guy first, and then what ensued was this crazy gunfight on stage, practically point blank, between Chileno and this guy.
I forgot about this part. It's so wild. Isn't it? I mean, even though it's really screwed up and really fucked up, it's really wild, isn't it? Like, me personally, I can only imagine, you know, doing karaoke, then someone drawing a gun on me because of what I'm singing. Because this is basically how that is. But I can't imagine it like actually happening to me. That's just, it's kind of wild though. Sounds like stuff from a movie, right? Or at least it does to me.
And they both managed to shoot each other. Chileno got shot in the lung, and this guy got shot in the mouth. They would both survive, but 8 audience members also got shot, and one of them actually died. This made international headlines, and by all accounts, should have devastated Chileno's career. But in fact, it had the opposite effect. It made him 10 times more famous because Chileno, he was representing narco-corrido music. And so in being the face of that, he kind of represented drug trafficking and criminals and outlaws all over Mexico and in the United States. And so he was kind of representing a very tough group of people. And so for him to have stood his ground on stage and shot first at this guy coming to attack him, it made him look brave. It made him look like a warrior. It validated him as the right person to be the face of narco corridos. But Chileno also understood that this probably was not the last time that someone was going to try to hurt him. That in virtue of being the face of narco culture, there's bound to be people that are very violent that don't like him, and they might come after him too. And so he actually told his
That's the thing, right? Is that it's that old saying, live by the sword, die by the sword. Well, I live by the gun. So I hope when that does happen, it's by a gun, right? And only because, like, you know, I was outnumbered or something. That's what I pray for. I don't want to go like in my sleep like all lame duck. Like that would suck. I mean, I want a death where it's remembered, you know, sung about in the houses of those who will carry my last name for all time or something, or a poem at least. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I mean it's very accurate, you know, and what that actually means, though, live by the sword, die by the sword, is that if your solution to everything is such ways, like one dimensional, you are setting yourself up to your own inevitable death or end in some way, right? That's basically what the moral of the story is supposed to be. But it is equally applicable, at least to me.
Circle, that he thought his days were numbered, that at some point someone was going to kill him. 4 months after the shootout, Chileno was back home in Sinaloa, Mexico, performing at a concert that his friends had told him he shouldn't do because he had lots of enemies in his hometown. But Chileno really wanted to do it. He got into the venue, he got on stage, his band was getting ready, thousands of people were coming into the audience, and before the show started, somebody handed him a note. And so Chileno takes the note, he's smiling, he's kind of looking around at the crowd, and then he looks down at the note and he reads it, and right away his expression completely changes. He looks distressed, he rubs his brow, he frowns, he kind of looks up at the crowd like he's looking for someone, and then he just goes blank in the face and he's looking out like he's looking past the crowd. And it's this long period of time where he's just blank staring into the audience. And then all of a sudden he just snaps out of it, takes the note, puts it in his pocket, picks up the microphone, and proceeds to give one of his best live performances to date. After the concert was over, Chileno made a special effort to say bye to everybody in his band, and he said bye to some people in the crowd, and then finally, after this kind of long drawn out goodbye, he walked out the back door. Shortly after, he was kidnapped, tied up, and then shot in the back of the head, execution style. It would turn out that note he received on stage was from his killers, who we don't know exactly who they are still to this day, but the note said, after this performance, we're going to kill you. And so that was the reason Chileno was so distressed, because whoever it was, he obviously understood it was a credible threat. But instead of panicking, he just decided he would give an amazing performance and then face his destiny. And so when he went outside, he knew he was going to get murdered, and he did.
You know, it's a bit different because, you know, I can imagine going towards what I think is my certain death, accepting it before I go and do it in the first place, right? That's what war is. In war, you can only accept you're going to die. It's not an issue of if or a question of if. It's only a question of when. That's it. You're already dead. This is different. Knowing for certain someone is going to end you and being forewarned of it, but doing what he did, we shouldn't mourn such men. We should celebrate they lived. freaking Chad and a billionth. Rest in peace, Chelino. Rest in peace. Va con Dios.
On September 25th, 1978, a Pacific Southwest Airlines Boeing 727 jet airliner entered San Diego airspace. Like all PSA aircraft, Flight 182 had a whimsical black button nose and smiley face painted underneath the cockpit. These so-called grinning birds were synonymous with the company's self-promoting ad campaign about them being the world's friendliest airline. But the airline was often criticized for being too friendly with their super low airfares, their kind of comic banter that the captains would employ through the intercom to passengers, and their female flight attendants who wore miniskirts and were instructed to make nice with the male passengers. Because the weather was clear, air traffic control directed Captain McFerrin and First Officer Fox to switch from instrument flight rules to visual flight rules procedures and to begin their final descent. Visual flight rules refers to pilots using their eyes to guide the plane. It's done when they're flying low, the weather's clear, and they can see the ground. At 8:59 a.m. that morning, as PSA Flight 182 descended down to 4,000 feet, air traffic control advised them of a Cessna, which is a small plane, that was ascending in their direction. Fox responded that they saw the Cessna, and so air traffic control came back and said to maintain visual separation. Maintain visual separation meant that despite ground radar-based controllers who could provide vertical and lateral separation criteria, the burden for maintaining separation fell solely on Captain McFerrin and his crew. In layman's terms, air traffic control was telling them, don't lose sight of the Cessna.
Yeah. And there's not much more redundancy that can be had there, really. Especially since back then, like, they didn't really have that much when it came to automated flight controls.
Inside the Cessna was a flight instructor named Martin Casey and his student, who was a United States Marine named David Boswell. As this little plane ascended, air traffic control informed them that PSA 182, who was right in front of them and slightly above them, they were on their descent. However, they had the Cessna in sight. As a result, the men inside of the Cessna did not take it upon themselves to actively begin looking for this jet. They assumed the pilots of PSA 182, who had them in sight, would avoid them. Back in PSA 182, there seemed to be some confusion in the cockpit. The two pilots were debating whether the Cessna they were watching fly lower than them, past them on the right, was the same Cessna that air traffic control had told them about. And at some point they agreed, yep, that's got to be the same Cessna. And so they called in to air traffic control that it looks like the Cessna has passed us. They've flown past us on the right. Immediately after this transmission, the black box recorded the two pilots talking to each other, basically trying to convince the other that yes, that was definitely the right Cessna. But after a couple of minutes of reassuring themselves, one of them says, boy, I hope that was the right Cessna. According to later testimony by the air traffic controller who was in communication with the pilots of PSA 182 as they were on their final descent, he would say when Captain McFerrin came over and said the Cessna has passed him on the right, he believed him and he didn't think to check to make sure it was the right one.
God damn, just casual human error. No. So oh man.
But in reality, the Cessna that McFerrin and Fox had seen was the wrong one. The real Cessna they were supposed to maintain visual separation with, the one containing Casey and Boswell, was still ascending in the direct flight path of PSA 182, except now this Cessna is in 182's blind spot below their nose, so they literally can't see each other. At 9:01 that morning, air traffic control got an alarm that PSA 182 and this Cessna are about to collide, but for some reason the air traffic controller did not alert both aircraft. Instead, this controller only contacted the Cessna and didn't tell them this was a dire situation. They said, hey, there's traffic in your vicinity, but I'm pretty sure it's just PSA 182 and they already see you, so you're fine. So Casey and Boswell inside of the Cessna just continued to ascend. 1 minute later, at 9:02 a.m., PSA 182 flies directly over the Cessna and strikes them with their nose wheel. The Cessna gets hooked by the wheel and flips upside down and gets trapped underneath the right wing of the jet. Seconds later, the Cessna splits in two. The tail section, containing David Boswell, plummets to the earth like a rag doll. The nose section of the Cessna that contained Martin Casey stayed trapped underneath the right wing for a few seconds before it detonated. Inside of PSA 182, this explosion was deafening, and immediately after it, McFerrin was recorded saying, "Easy, baby, easy, baby." Then he asks Fox, "What's the damage?" And Fox says, "It's bad, man, we're hit." Despite trying to keep the plane flying level, it lurched forward into an unrecoverable nosedive, and McFerrin, knowing they were doomed, calmly calls out to air traffic control and says, "We're going down." Air traffic responded, "Okay, we'll have the equipment ready for you." Then the black box recorded the sound of a stall warning inside the cockpit, and as the aircraft streaked at over 300 miles per hour straight towards the ground, McFerrin's last known transmission to air traffic was, "This is it, baby." Seconds before impact, McFerrin gave his final command over the intercom, which was, "Brace yourselves." And then right before the black box cut out, someone in the cabin yelled, "I love you, Mom." At 9:03 a.m., PSA 182 slammed nose first into the ground just outside of downtown San Diego in an area called North Park. The resulting explosion of thousands of gallons of jet fuel sent a shockwave that was registered 2 miles away. Almost immediately, firefighters were rushing towards the rising mushroom cloud of black, oily smoke, and many of the first responders that arrived at the crash site in those first few hours were deeply disturbed at what they saw. The bodies that had not been destroyed in the explosion had gotten trapped up in the trees. All told, 144 people were killed in this accident. 135 were from PSA 182, 2 were from the Cessna, and 7 were just unlucky people that were standing on the ground in North Park. Following a 1-year investigation into the mid-air collision, it was determined that the flight crew of PSA 182 was found to be primarily responsible because there was that moment that was picked up in the black box where the two pilots were unsure if the Cessna that passed them was the right one, but instead of calling that into air traffic control and getting confirmation, they blew it off. The morning of the crash, a San Diego photographer was at a press event when he heard the explosion overhead, which was 182 colliding with the Cessna, and he began taking pictures, and he captured these now 2 infamous photos of PSA 182 seconds before they hit the ground.
God damn, man. Holy shit. That's rough. That's ultra rough. And this is one of the reasons why I hate being trapped in a flying cylinder tube going faster than I can run in the goddamn sky. I'm terrified of planes, but not terrified of jumping out of them. Ain't that a weird kind of coinkydink? What would you call it? A whatchamajig? A thingamajiggy? Something like that. But yeah, just because I've only been in a couple of like crashes and aerial vehicles, you know, but that's, you're doing combat missions, that shit's bound to happen at some point. But being, you know, just trapped in like again, it's a steel tube, and you're doing 300 straight towards the surface of the earth. Bub, hopefully nobody felt it. Or at least that's what they say. They say you don't feel it when it happens. I'm like, oh. That's oh man. That's a horrible way to go. Or maybe not so much, because hopefully everybody died instantly. But that part where, you know, they hear over the mic, "I love you, Mom." Bub. I mean, adults, I can get over. Right? We've already all had our chances at life, plenty. Okay? At a certain age, it's like, well, if an adult dies, sure, it sucks, but it's kind of inevitable anyway. Whereas with kids, they literally just got it started. Didn't even start a chance at life. They were just alive. Fucking hey. Jesus.
Just outside of the popular tourist town of Amaga in northern Colombia lies this thick green jungle. And if you know where to look, there is actually a walking path that leads you from Amaga deep into this jungle. And if you keep going, it will bring you all the way to this terrifying, enormous old railroad bridge that spans this huge ravine. Now, this bridge is no longer used by trains. It's been decommissioned. However, since its decommissioning, there's actually been, ironically, more traffic on this bridge, although it is the foot traffic variety. People come out to this bridge to go bungee jumping. Bungee jumping is a thrill-seeking activity where people will leap off of high places, like this bridge, and they'll jump with an elastic rope tied to their ankles. And so this rope has been very carefully measured so that when it is fully stretched all the way out, it ensures whoever has jumped will still not impact the ground. Back in early July of 2021, a 25-year-old Colombian lawyer named Yesenia Gomez, who lived about an hour north of Amaga in the larger city of Medellin, she told her boyfriend that she wanted to go bungee jumping.
Oh, no. I remember this one. Shit, dude. Just, Again, I've fallen quite a bit more than the average person, and that sucks enough, but this stuff, fuck.
This was something Yesenia had talked about for a long time, wanting to go bungee jumping, but every time it became a real thing and they were actually going to go do it, she would back down because she was just too scared. But for whatever reason, in July of 2021, Yesenia had the confidence and the courage to actually see this thing through. And so her boyfriend, when he heard how serious she was, he capitalized on the opportunity because he had never bungee jumped before and he really wanted to, but he couldn't without his girlfriend. And so now it seemed like she was serious. And so right away, he called the Amaga bungee jumping company to book a slot for he and Yesenia to jump off of their bridge. So on the day they were supposed to jump, which was Sunday, July 18th, Yesenia and her boyfriend hopped in their car and they drove an hour south to Amaga. And when they got there, they found the walking trail and they made their way out to this bridge. And when they get out to this bridge, they are amazed at the number of people who were already in line on this bridge waiting to jump off of it. They knew this was a popular spot, but perhaps they didn't realize just how popular it was.
And the thing is that with women doing this kind of stuff, you got to have a really tight leash on them. Because if they get all hot and heckled inside of their skull, right, they tend to go a bit wild. So you got to secure them especially well. And Jesus, between you and me, someone failed to here.
And so Yesenia and her boyfriend, they get in line behind the nearly 100 other jumpers ahead of them, and they proceed to wait. And over the next several hours, Yesenia and her boyfriend would have front row seats to all of the jumpers ahead of them jumping off the bridge. Now, it seems like Yesenia, in her mind, believed she would arrive at this bridge and very quickly she and her boyfriend would leap off and it would be great and so much fun. But now they've been forced to wait for a really long time. And this whole time, they're watching other people jump. And Yesenia is starting to panic. Suddenly, bungee jumping looked terrifying. It did not look like something she wanted to do. And so she was beginning to second guess her decision. And so her boyfriend, he's trying to calm her down and he's telling her, oh, it's totally safe. Look at all these people who have jumped. They're all fine. They're all smiling. They're so happy. You're going to be so proud of yourself. But despite his best efforts to calm his girlfriend down, Yesenia just could not calm down. But she did tell her boyfriend that she's not about to back down. She's going to go through with this.
God damn it. No matter how many times I hear this, it gets to me. This shit gets to me. I'm like, ooh. It's like me when you were doing like any type of rope training or staticky heights type of thing. Or if I'm in that freaking tube that flies through the sky at, almost the speed of sound. I feel it. I feel it. I'm absolutely terrified before I have to take my turn. Right? Like I'm terrified being in the aircraft before I get to hook up my line and just get the hell out of that thing. I want to get out of the bird, okay? I don't want to be trapped in there anymore. That's how it works with me. I'm terrified of static heights, but I can halo and hey-ho all day. Right? I'm terrified of climbing up on a mountain, but not scared of getting off of it. I could jump out of the plane. I can't stay in it. It sucks to stay in it. Anyways, I'm going to stop ranting, but damn it, I feel her here. I really do.
And so several hours went by of this totally high-stress, anxious waiting period, and then finally, Yesenia and her boyfriend reached the front of the line, at which point the staff members who've been doing this all day long, they signal the two to step forward and get their harnesses on. And so Yesenia and her boyfriend, they make their way to the edge of the platform, so they're looking out over this ravine, and the staff members are putting on their harnesses and getting them ready, and the whole time, Yesenia, she's starting to get tunnel vision, her heart is racing, she's totally panicked. She doesn't think this is fun at all. She just wants to get this over with. And then at some point, one of the staff members finally says, okay, jump. And so Yesenia jumps. Except it would turn out Yesenia had made a mistake. That staff member who had said, okay, jump, was talking to her boyfriend, not Yesenia. However, Yesenia, in her totally panicked state, had just not understood and had leapt, believing they were telling her to jump. However,
you see what I mean? You see what I mean? God damn it, man. Shit. This one still gets to me.
However, the staff members had only put her harness on. They had not attached the actual elastic rope to her ankles. And so when Yesenia jumped, there was nothing stopping her from smashing into the ground. And so as soon as she leapt off the bridge, her boyfriend ripped off all of his gear and he ran down the bridge. He leapt over the railing and he ran down the hillside all the way to the bottom of this ravine. But when he finally got to his girlfriend, it was already too late. She was already gone. It would later be determined Yesenia did not die from impacting the ground. She actually died from a heart attack she suffered on the fall down, which means she must have realized after she jumped that she jumped too early, that she did not have the bungee cord attached to her legs. And so literally the fear of what was about to happen to her killed her.
Talk about dying of fright. People forget that kind of stuff's possible. People die of broken heart, right? People die from, losing the will to live. And people die from, fainting. Like, I mean, this stuff's real. Poor girl, though. Va con Dios, mija. Va con Dios.
In 1998, Fresha Bakery, which was a bread company in Leicester, England, was all about profits. And their employees knew this, because all the time, corners were being cut for the sake of money, even if it was totally dangerous. In May of that year, one of the company's industrial ovens needed a minor repair. One of the cogs inside the oven had come loose and fallen off, and someone just needed to pick it up and put it back on. To picture this oven in your head, think of the scanner you put your luggage through at the airport, the X-ray machine. It's kind of like that. It was this 80-foot long metal tunnel where there was a conveyor belt that ran through it, and you would put dough on one side and it would run through with the conveyor belt through this oven, and then on the other side it would be fully cooked. Whenever repairs were needed inside one of these ovens, the procedure was to completely turn off the oven. So not just the heat, but the whole operation needed to be completely shut down, and then the oven would sit for almost a full 24 hours before a mechanic would go in and make the repair. But the mechanic cost money, and every hour that this bread machine was not operational, the company would lose $1,500. And so the managers of this company thought, you know what, that's too much money to be giving up. If we do the repairs ourselves, that saves us on the cost of the mechanic, and if we can find a way to make the repairs while leaving the oven partially running, that will save us a whole bunch of money too. Someone pointed out that it was possible to turn the heat all the way down in the oven, but allow the conveyor belt to keep rotating through. They just needed to find a way to get in with this conveyor belt moving around them. And so they came up with a plan. Even though the oven sat flush to the ground, there was a side panel that could open up and you could crawl underneath the oven, and right above you would be the conveyor belt. And so they thought, well, hey, if we just remove a couple of sections of the conveyor belt, when that gap in the belt cycles around and is right over someone who is standing underneath it, they can stand up into that gap and kind of be hunched over and walk along inside of the oven, staying in that gap until they come across the cog that's going to be right on the ground. They can pick it up, put it right back on, and keep walking on, staying in the gap until they reach the other side, at which point they could crawl out the exit. The managers were confident, and so they began walking around the factory asking for volunteers, and they were offering extra pay. Two men, 44-year-old Ian Erickson and 47-year-old David Mays, volunteered for the job, and their managers told them they would do it the next day because they needed time to turn the heat off on the oven and let it cool down first. That night, David was out with his friends, and he was talking about how he was kind of nervous about getting inside of a semi-operational industrial oven, but he told them the money was good. The following day,
Nope. Nuh-uh. Nope. Not at all. Can't do it. No way. Impossible. Imposible. Nunca. Would you do it? I wouldn't. I'd say, nope, screw that. Y'all should do it the right way. Probably get fired for opening my big mouth, but whatever. Safety is first with me. Could you do it? Yeah, me neither. Fuck that. I don't care how good the money is. I'm going to do something else. I'll sell toe picks on OnlyFools. But yeah, I'd be such a jack. I really would be. If employed like in a environment like that, I would be the safety OSHA guy inspector. That's what I'd be. You can't get 3 points of contact between yourself and that thing, and it's a 15-foot drop. All right, let's lower this fucker down to at least 10 foot, and we're going to have some big giant pads placed around all the impact sites. And on top of that, you're going to wear a harness. It'll be rigged up to an I-beam in the ceiling, just in case some shit goes south. And we'll have some wires attached to you as well so that we could, keep you level and even. In case you do fall, we can arrest it. And on top of that, you're going to have safety goggles and the proper type of gloves that aren't going to burn up as soon as you get touching anything hot. And the proper gear and equipment. If when I was in the Army, if at any point, for any reason, I was delayed, not late, because I was rarely ever late, but delayed, it would be because of my over preparation of shit. That's why. Like, if we were running with with strikers, right? Then I would make for sure the strikers had all the panels on them, and there would be mini locks on the panels so no suckers could steal that shit. And then every single hatch would be double, triple checked in case, any of the mechanisms that keep it in place, because those hatches are like 200 pounds on the strikers. And then the loading ramp, the troop and passenger door, that thing weighs like 600 or 500 pounds, something like that. It is heavy. How do I know? I almost got freaking crushed by a striker ramp. Hey, what's up, Peekaboo Sue? You're a bit late to the party, I see. How you doing? Awesome. So sorry I'm late. I just found out, and my darn internet is so slow, snail. It make AOL dial-up seem fast. Yeah, well, I mean, at least you're here. And we're about halfway through, I think. Yeah, we're halfway through. You said AOL. Shoo, I'm old enough to remember Netscape. Netscape and what was the one before that? It was before Skybiz. I know AOL was around at that time. For those younger folks of y'all that don't know what the hell we're talking about, AOL is what us old people used to use when we first connected to the internet ever, basically. It's one of those things. And it means America Online. That's what it is. I think it still has like chat rooms and shit like that too. But yeah, anyway, welcome Peekaboo. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, I'm also old enough to remember when it was first reported, when they sent the first email. That shit was wild. Well, okay, I'll say the first publicly acknowledged email, because the internet was military first. Anyway, I'm going to stop ranting and raving. Thank you for joining us, Peekaboo. And let's continue. We're about to see some people get cooked.
At 9 a.m., the oven's heat was turned all
Well, actually, we're about to hear about someone getting cooked.
the way down, and the plan was it would sit like that all day and cool off all day, and then in the evening, Ian and David would get inside and do the job. But Ian and David had a really important soccer game they wanted to watch that night, and so they asked their manager, would it be possible to go in a little bit earlier? And so the manager walked down to the oven and put his hand inside one of the entrances, and there were fans blowing into it, and it had been off for a couple of hours, and he thought, you know what, this is probably fine, you guys can go now. A few sections of the conveyor belt were removed, Ian was given a radio, and the two men opened the side to the oven, and they crawled in on the far left side of the oven, and they waited for the gap to come around. When it did, they popped up, and they began their journey into the center of the oven. About 5 minutes later, Ian came over the radio and said, hey, it's really hot in here. And the manager came back and said, don't worry, it's supposed to be a little warm in there, but it's nothing that can hurt you. And then a couple of seconds later, Ian comes back over the radio and says, no, it's really hot in here. It is unbearably hot in here. And so one of the managers ran over and checked the temperature gauge, which unbelievably no one had done to that point. And the temperature at the center of the oven was reading over 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
See, I've been burned a few times. And I've had plastic melted on my skin. Thankfully, in very limited places. I've almost been burnt alive in one of my Humvees back in the day. Bob, this makes my other end that has a pair of lips pucker. I swear to God. I'm not joking. It's just like, oh, no. But yeah, I got trapped in a Humvee while during one of my first, stints, and almost got burnt to death. And I was watching my buddy get burnt to death directly, so that wasn't fun. Luckily, we got out, and I was able to help him strip a bunch of his shit off before it really started to get to him. But he's still got significant burns from that. Anyway, that being said, Bob.
It was hot enough to boil water in the center of this oven. And unfortunately, there was nowhere for Ian or David to go. The belt could not go in reverse, and the fastest it could move is 17 minutes start to finish, so agonizingly slow. And they could not crawl up or below the conveyor belt in either direction. There wasn't enough clearance, and they'd get sucked up into the machinery. So they literally had to stay in the gap and slowly walk towards the hottest section of the oven. And so for 10 minutes, Ian and David slowly made their way across this oven, screaming out in pain, yelling for help from anyone, someone, but no one could do anything. And even if they hit the emergency stop button on the oven, it wouldn't help them, because the heat inside of the oven is not because it's on, it was residual heat. And by turning off the oven, that would just stop the conveyor belt, trapping Ian and David in the hottest part of the oven. Workers ran and got their tools and did everything they could to try to dismantle portions of the oven to try to get down to Ian and David. But by the time they finally pulled off big pieces of the oven, Ian had already made it to the other side and been pulled out, and he was unfortunately deceased. He had been burned alive, and David had collapsed somewhere in the oven and had been crushed by the machinery that went over him. The bakery and their management team were all fined for their part in this tragedy.
Yeah, fined instead of put into prison. That's what, if you just fine them, then they'll think, okay, well, I mean, we can get away with it, then we can keep cutting corners and shit. No, there has to be some damn firm consequences. This whole soft on crime and criminals are just misunderstood is bullshit. People make decisions, people make choices. They need to pay for them. This whole fining them bullshit is just freaking nonsense. Absolutely so.
When the earth collapses in on itself, creating a hole in the ground that sucks away anything in its wake, that's called a sinkhole. These holes form when water dissolves the rock layer underneath the soil. They range dramatically in size, from a barely noticeable depression in the ground to massive chasms that are hundreds of meters wide and deep. If you're one of the unfortunate few that falls into a large sinkhole, you probably won't get out again, because the ground inside of a sinkhole after the initial implosion just continues to sink. So if you were standing on the ground inside of a sinkhole, you would continuously be pulled into the ground as it continued to crumble and churn like quicksand below your feet. And even if you managed to get to the sides inside of the sinkhole, you could not climb up again because there wouldn't be any handholds, because the soil is all loose and wet. Luckily, most sinkholes form slowly and show lots of warning signs, allowing people to get away before it opens up. But there are unique circumstances where large sinkholes can appear out of nowhere. In Russia, hot water is piped into business and residential buildings during the harsh winters. On November 19th, 2019, in the Russian city of Penza, which is 340 miles south of Moscow, a large hot water pipe burst underground below a car park. Initially, nobody knew the pipe had burst, but witnesses would later say they saw steam coming out of the ground near the car park, but they didn't think anything of it.
How did no one know the pipe had burst when the water bill come doeth? I mean, that might be a little ridiculous. Plus the usage, wouldn't they monitor that? I mean, hell, like here in El Paso in the United States of America, they freaking charge you extra if you have leaks. Plus your usage goes up even though you're not running water the whole time and you're not aware of it. And then they'll be like, oh, wait, this is a little abnormal. Let's come inspect this shit real quick. I guess they don't do that in Russia. Or it's so corrupt that nobody pays attention.
A few minutes after the steam appeared, 49-year-old Vladimir Volyelkin was driving his car through the car park. With him was his co-worker, 53-year-old Igor Chikasov.
This man got posted by Mrballen in a photo of him next to a bunch of boiled crab. I swear to God, I mean, is that... This guy gets boiled alive somehow, doesn't he? Commander Wolf, It's Russia. Monitor his body count. I mean, looks at Chernobyl. Oh, yeah, well, I mean, true. Never mind, it is Russia.
His car through the car park. With him was his co-worker, 53-year-old Igor Chikasov. They worked together at a furniture store. As they made their way towards the exit of this car park, there was another car ahead of them that rolled over that section of pavement that was steaming, and they watched as it rolled over and drove off, and nothing happened. And so Vladimir and Igor, they drove over that section of pavement, and the ground collapsed under them. The burst hot water pipe had injected thousands of gallons of water into the soil right under the pavement, and so it caused a sinkhole. But not just any sinkhole, a sinkhole that was slowly filling with boiling water. When the ground collapsed under Igor's car, it flipped the car forward and it landed upside down at the bottom of this 10-meter deep sinkhole. And it landed just perfectly to where the doors could not open. They would hit the sides of the sinkhole, which also meant they couldn't roll the windows down and crawl out because they would hit the sides of the sinkhole. The men managed to get their seatbelts off and flip themselves around and began kicking on the windshield and yelling out for help. At this point, onlookers had made it to the edge of the sinkhole, and when they looked down inside, they realized there was nothing anyone could do. Jumping in was a death sentence. So they watched in horror as Vladimir and Igor desperately tried to escape, but the scalding water continued to fill the hole until it began leaking into the cabin of the vehicle, at which point the men went quiet. A few moments later, the car completely disappeared from view under the boiling water. Although not held criminally responsible, the water company that owned the pipe that burst offered to pay compensation to both families as well as cover all funeral costs.
Man, oh man. In Russia, you don't try to get killed on the street. The street tries to kill you. Freaking hell. Ah. You would think with the amount of shit I've inflicted on other human beings, or what I've seen inflicted on others, or, you know, like picking up pieces of kids would make me numb and inured towards all this kind of stuff. But for some reason, it still gets to me sometimes. You know what I mean? Just imagining, like I've burnt myself plenty of times, but just imagining boiling alive. And Mrballen picked a picture of him where it was a bunch of boiled, like, lobster on a plate. Of course. I mean, it's kind of fitting, but still a little messed up.
Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming is one of the most remarkable and beautiful places on Earth. Not only is it renowned for its biodiversity, which includes some incredibly resilient microbial organisms, it's also home to one
called extremophiles, and they exist in places where nothing normal should or can.
of the world's so-called supervolcanoes. This supervolcano sits atop one of the world's largest magma bodies fueled by an upwelling plume of superheated material. This dynamic and violent subterranean plumbing means the water bodies at the surface, the famous Yellowstone hot springs, are highly acidic and incredibly hot. If you were to ignore the countless warnings around these hot springs telling you to stay away, do not go in the hot springs, if you were to ignore those and go in one, or more accurately, fall in one, this is what would happen to you. First, your body would register that your skin was bathing in waters exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This would hurt like nothing you can possibly imagine. But it would only hurt as long as your nervous system was able to register pain, which would only be for about 1 minute or less. At this temperature, your skin would begin to quickly break down and disintegrate, and your blood vessels in your underlying dermis would rupture, causing rapid blood loss. Some underlying skin layers would not break down, but they would lose all of their water and become tough and blackened. And your underlying subcutaneous fat would bubble off as well. All in all, this is known as a full thickness burn, and it would occur in about 1 minute in these waters. Your Your nervous system would enter a state of shock and become irreversibly damaged, which would lead to most, if not all, of your organs to fail if the heat stress has not already done that to you. You would be dead within 2 to 3 minutes, and then at that point, the acidity of the water would take over. Within a few hours, your body, including your skeleton, would be completely dissolved into absolute nothingness. And for anyone who falls in but manages to climb out again before being dissolved, they are not out of the woods. Many of those people, unfortunately, will die hours, days, months later due to complications from the burns. On June
Yeah, infections and everything. Because the thing is like your skin, your epidermis, like it's an organ of its own. So think about your skin as like a glove instead of like, some paper that covers you, right? It's part of you, and you're actually quite unfamiliar with it. Your skin is your first line of defense of your immune system. When that gets broken down entirely, exposed, extreme burns, depending on how bad, like it can't be repaired, it can't be healed, and you now have a giant open wound in your skin, in your epidermis, and your immune system is permanently compromised. And that's the least of your worries. But that's just all on the skin alone. Fug.
7th, 2016, Colin Scott and his sister Sable went to Yellowstone to see the famous hot springs. The siblings were exploring the Norris Geyser Basin, which is the park's oldest and hottest thermal area, when they decided to leave the safety of the boardwalk and walk past all the signs telling them, do not leave the boardwalk, this is dangerous, turn around. They decided to walk past all of those and venture out off the course. They walked approximately 200 meters away from the path to the edge of a hot spring that was not really part of the main tour, and they were just standing there when Colin apparently tripped and fell into the hot spring. And his sister was just not able to do anything. She knew she couldn't go in after him, and he very quickly sunk below the surface and didn't come up again. She ran back to try to get help, but by the time they got back to the edge of the hot spring, he was gone. And in fact, the only thing they would find of Colin Scott was his flip-flops. Since 1890, Colin Scott, along with 21 other people, have died by falling into these hot springs.
God damn. I mean, I like hot springs that are like climate controlled. But Jesus, bub. Like falling in and being boiled alive, that's gotta suck. I hope it was quick. In all these cases, I hope it's quick. I mean, I've suffered enough with shit that's happened to me. Imagining all that shit at once? Fuck.
Despite the fact that today there is already tons of shocking content on the internet, there is still something truly insane about Wu Yongning's videos. In 2017, Wu was a 26-year-old climbing enthusiast who was dubbed China's first rooftopper. A rooftopper is someone who, usually illegally, climbs onto rooftops, cranes, smokestacks, big antennas, skyscrapers, or any other really high, dangerous location. Almost always, these daredevils are going to these incredibly dangerous locations.
I swear to God, if my son tries to do some kind of shit like this, God could not save him from me. I'm going to make sure my boy has a real good and healthy fear, and that he will obey it appropriately. Because for him, F all of this shit, I'd sooner let him jump out of aircraft. At least he has a freaking, a chute. Like,
Almost always, these daredevils are going to these incredibly dangerous locations in order to capture footage of themselves so they can post it to the internet in hopes that it goes viral and they become famous and make a bunch of money. But because there are so many people competing for the internet's attention, rooftoppers really need to push the envelope if they want to stand out and make it big. And Wu Yongning did just that, and the internet rewarded him with millions of followers and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most rooftoppers would go to the tops of these incredible locations and then take selfies of themselves standing there posing at the top. Wu would do that, but he also did a couple other things that nobody else was doing that kind of became his trademarks. The first one was he would dangle over the edge of the building or the crane or the antenna that he was holding on to, and he would do pull-ups, but he would keep doing them until he reached muscle failure and then would barely be able to pull himself back up to safety. Another
Nope. You see that? You see that shit? You see that? Fuck no. Hell no. Nope. Never. Not even a once.
failure, and then would
I don't care how much money they pay me. I don't care how many views I get. I do not give a shit. No, no, no. And nunca, never. Okay? I'm not that guy. Someone else can be that guy. I'm not that guy.
barely be able to pull himself back up to
See,
safety.
nope. Fuck that. Nope. Nuh-uh. Mm-mm. Nope. I hate looking at it. I hate looking at it. Nope. Nope. No, thank you. I can't. Nope. Nope. See that shit? You see that shit? You see that shit? Fuck that shit. Hell no. Hell no. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. Impossible. Could any of you do that? I couldn't. Hell no. And I've jumped out of airplanes and right onto enemy targets' houses. Like, well, sometimes we kind of missed, but you can't really control for all weather factors. But yeah, like, no, no, thank you. At least if I have a shoot, I can control, how fast I'm going, and I've got some measure of control over shit. If I'm in a plane, I'm not the pilot, right? Plus, if anything fails on the plane, then we're all dead anyway. And, when it comes to, like, static heights, you standing me at the top of this bullshit? I'm dying before I even fall. That's what that's what's gonna happen. But I can do halo or hey-ho jumps all day. Because I can kind of control that stuff. I mean, I'm just saying.
Another trademark move is he would go to the top of these huge buildings and he would get right on the edge and he would do a handstand and then he would pull one arm back. So he's doing a one-armed handstand and then he would tilt his body as far as he could over the edge until he couldn't do it any farther and he'd let himself come back over to safety. And then perhaps the most difficult to watch trademark was when Wu would basically run up to the edge of buildings and stop just short. And he wouldn't just run to the edge, he would use a self-balancing scooter and go as fast as he could right to the edge of the building and stop just short. And over again, he'd go right to the edge and stop, where he's literally an inch away from tumbling off the edge. Or he'd line himself up where he knew exactly how far he was from the edge, and he would do these really aggressive somersaults forward, and he would stop with his legs dangling off the edge of the building. And of course, all of these trademark moves were done without...
Nope, couldn't do it. Nope, hell no. No, thank you. You can be the ninja. I don't want to be... Screw that. To hell with that. Hell no. No.
any
Never
safety
me.
equipment, and most times Wu did these stunts without any
How many of y'all watching would do this? Raise a hand in the chat.
anybody there to potentially pull him back up if he gets stuck. About 3/4 of the way through 2017, Wu had posted over 500 videos and live streaming clips to various social media sites, and he was starting to make some real money off of it. On one video sharing site alone, he had made over $80,000 just from donations that had come in. And so it was clear this was becoming a career. But as the money and the fame were coming into Wu, he started to realize that in order for him to stay on top and keep earning at this level, he would need to continuously outperform his last big stunt. And already he was brushing up against death on virtually every video he took.
You know what I would have done with all that money, knowing what I know now? Started some other business, because this could not be, my business. I swear to God. I would do any other business, just not this shit. I'd be done. I'd be like, okay, I made the money. I'm starting a company. This is the end. This is it. This is over. Sorry, no more. I'm done. Okay, bye. Thank you for your service. Hasta la vista. Fuck that. Hell no.
In early November of that year, Wu heard
I'll sooner fight anybody on the planet. Freaking Thor Bjornsson. Who's the other guy? Eddie Hall. I don't know. Freaking, I don't know if Butterbean's still around. He might be. He might still be around. Friggin', who's the other one? Like, I'd sooner do that than do this shit. No, thank you.
about a competition that was offering $15,000 to its winner. The details of this competition are hazy at best, but from the sounds of it, it was a viral video competition. Make the most viral video and you win the prize. This competition served as motivation for Wu to finally attempt his craziest stunt yet. He figured if he had the footage of this particular stunt, he was sure to win this competition, and with the prize money, he could pay for his wedding and cover his mother's medical expenses. And so on November 8th, Wu traveled to the Huayan International.
But you could only cover expenses if you're alive. So start a business and do something with that. Maybe a tourist business. You've been to all these locations? Okay. Well, you can tell people how to...
National Center in central China.
I'm just saying. It wouldn't be me.
This massive 62-story skyscraper would be the tallest building Wu had ever performed a stunt on. The public was only able to get up to the 44th floor, and so Wu had to take the elevator up to somewhere between the 40th and 44th floor, at which point he climbed out of a window and free climbed his way all the way up to the top, so 20 additional floors just climbing the side of a skyscraper. Once he got to the rooftop, he set up his tripod and his camera, and he turned on his live stream. And then he walked around and he began preparing himself for the stunt. Live stream viewers that tuned in would see Wu sitting on the edge of the skyscraper, and he's meticulously wiping down the edge of this building. It's the area he'll be grabbing onto to perform his stunt, which was going to be his trademark pull-ups. And so after several minutes of Wu cleaning this ledge, he begins to lower himself where his arms are still tucked up over the ledge. So he's not hanging, he's got his arms kind of anchored on the top. He's like testing the edge of this lip. And he kind of feels around and he can tell that it's not a good grip. It's not good enough for him to go down to a full extension. And so
No. Shit, dude. I don't like it. Can we stop? Can we stop? No.
So he pulls himself back up and he goes back to wiping down the edge. And from the looks of it, it seems like Wu is actually pretty nervous about this stunt. And normally when you watch Wu's videos, he doesn't seem nervous at all, even leading up to his stunt. But this one just seemed different. And so after again wiping down this ledge as much as he possibly could, he gets himself ready, lowers himself onto his arms, he lets his legs drop over the edge of the building, and then he goes to full extension. And from there, he does 2 complete pull-ups. And then after the second pull-up, he begins to try to pull himself back up to safety. but he's fatigued and he can't quite get himself up over the edge. He starts to use his feet to try to use the glass to push himself back up, but he can't get a grip. And for the next 15 seconds, Wu is desperately trying to get himself up and over this ledge. He's trying to muscle himself up, but it's obvious he's completely fatigued. I mean, he did free climb almost 20 stories to get up there, and so it makes sense his arms would be tired, but there's nobody up there to help pull him up. And so after a while, he goes back to full extension because he can't do anything, and he looks down as if he's sizing up if he can survive this fall, which he obviously can't. And then the camera picks up a sort of whimpering sound that appears to come from Wu, and then he loses his grip and he falls to his death.
Oh, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. Fuck, man.
In the early 1970s, a man named Marshall Applewhite was fired from his music teaching job for having an inappropriate relationship with a male student. Shortly after, he admitted himself into a psychiatric institution where he met a nurse who worked there named Bonnie Nettles. Both had a deep interest in biblical prophecy, and Applewhite, after meeting Nettles, was convinced they had met in a previous life. Nettles agreed.
Uh-oh. Another cult. You would think after so many times of cults happening, people would just say no. But your average person isn't very aware of these kinds of things, are they?
Agreed and took it a step further, saying extraterrestrials had come to her and preordained that she would someday meet Applewhite. The two did not have a romantic relationship at all. It was strictly platonic. They bonded over a desire to ascend to a higher level of existence and ultimately reach the kingdom of heaven. Applewhite began calling himself Bo, and Nettles became Peep, and together they would start an infamous cult known as Heaven's Gate. The premise of Heaven's Gate was that an alien spacecraft that they simply called the UFO was going to come to Earth and whisk away Heaven's Gate cult members, elevating them to a new world and a better life that they referred to as Tela, or the evolutionary level above human. There was a catch though. Anybody on Earth who did not get on the UFO whenever it got here would be recycled, i.e. destroyed, along with everybody else on Earth, and then at some point a new human population would grow and another UFO would come, and whoever got on that would be saved over and over and over again. That was just how it worked. And Bo and Peep were telling everyone they talked to about Heaven's Gate that we're already in end times. Apparently there were signs that this UFO is going to be here any day, and so now is the time to join the cult.
Well, yeah, it's the Heaven's Gate cult. That's what this is. From Commander Wolf. I feel like I've heard this one before. Yeah, well, I'm very sure you have.
And so by 1975, Bo and Peep had recruited 20 people to be a part of their cult, which meant they gave up their families, they gave up their possessions, they basically gave up everything in their life and moved to Colorado to live in total...
Maybe I should start a cult. It'll be the best cult ever. There's a few conditions to join the cult. You want to hear them? You gotta believe in reality first and foremost. So objective reality, that's where everything starts and basically probably is going to end. Right? If you're going to be religious, it's got to be a religion of human flourishing. And don't do stuff to kids ever in any way, shape, or form. And then be good to each other and each other's families and stuff. There you go. That's the cult. How's it sound? How's that sound? You let me know in the chat.
poverty as they waited for this UFO to arrive. For 10 years, cult members waited and waited for this UFO that never showed up. And Bo and Peep are aggressively reminding people that this is the path. You just gotta stay the path. And then Peep,
I'll even do a compromise. I'll allow furryism or furries or whatever it's called, as long as it's in the privacy of their home and it's not anything publicly disclosed or spoken of ever, period. Same thing with Libijika, the alphabet soup. Same thing with that. How's that? How's that? Oh, shoot. People probably say something like, oh, what are you, Christian or religious or something? No, I just, I don't want to see freaking people in BDSM bondage with a freaking, I'm just, is that too much to ask? But you know what I mean, I'm sure. But yeah, freaking.
unexpectedly died of cancer in 1980.
Oh, yeah. Someone called me young recently. That felt pretty good. Wait. I don't remember if it was a comment on one of my videos or someone else's video that responded to me or whatever. But yeah, someone was like, oh, no, I don't see you being older than 40. It felt good. I liked it. It was a great thing to read. I was like, yeah, buddy.
Which really screwed things up for the cult. In their doctrine, it was destiny that Bo and Peep would get on that UFO and make their way to Tela, the evolutionary level above human. That was their destiny. And now Peep has died on planet Earth. She did not get on the UFO. She did not ascend to Tela. She will not get to Heaven's Gate. Bo was devastated and horribly depressed, and it wasn't really clear what was going to happen to Heaven's Gate. But he composed himself and he began to tweak his messaging a little bit. Bo began telling his followers that Peep had in fact ascended to Tela. Yes, she did not get on the UFO. However, the aliens must have given her a signal that if she leaves behind this human body, this mere vessel, you'll still ascend to Tela. Basically, he was preaching to them, if you just end your own life at the right moment, you can go to Tela too. But Bo didn't really know what the right moment was. He didn't know what the trigger was going to be. Until 1995, when astronomers discovered the Hale-Bopp comet was going to be passing by Earth 2 years later in 1997. And Bo saw this as the trigger. The UFO was going to be hiding behind the trail of this comet, and for sure, Peep was riding on that UFO, and as soon as it passes by Earth, we need to ascend. And so fast forward to March 26, 1997, as the Hale-Bopp comet passed by Earth, 39 of the Heaven's Gate cult members, including Bo, they began their journey. Bo told them they would be exiting the Earth in 3 groups. And so on March 26th, Group 1 entered their San Diego mansion and consumed applesauce mixed with barbiturates, followed it up with a whole bunch of vodka, and then put a bag over their head and waited for death. Then on March 27th, Group 2 entered the San Diego mansion, knowing full well what they were walking into. They all had specific jobs of how they were going to clean up the mess left from Group 1.
Even though I've heard it before, it's still just people doing people shit. And I hate it. I hate it so much. Urgh.
They cleaned it up, then they picked up the Group 1 members and placed them in beds and put a purple cloth over their face before they, Group 2, consumed their own applesauce mixed with barbiturates and put a bag over their head and waited for death. On March 28th, the third group entered the San Diego mansion, and this included Bo, and they did the same cleanup as Group 2. They put the Group 2 deceased members in bed as well, and then they consumed applesauce and barbiturates, followed it up with vodka, bag over their head, waited for death. Bo had given special instructions to 2 of the members that were within that third group to wait until he had exited Earth and take special care to put him in a specific bed, organized a certain way, and then when they consumed their own applesauce and barbiturates followed up with vodka, they should do that in their bed, because
The reason why it seems like barbiturates are so popular in this one is because during this time period, right, like the mid 90s, barbiturates were really, really ubiquitous. I mean, kids in freaking grade school were getting a hold of them. And usually it was girls who were like, like introduced to them by boys that were in like gangs or something, or by like pushers on the street or some shit where I grew up. So like, yeah, they were real popular, especially in the 90s. Bob. Plus, it was kind of like everywhere as well.
they're the last 2. There's nobody else to move them. When a former cult member stopped by the San Diego mansion to check in on the cult, they went inside not knowing what they were up to and found all 39 cult members deceased, laying in bunk beds with identical black and white Nike running shoes on their feet with purple shrouds over their bodies, and they were all wearing matching armbands that read Heaven's Gate Away Team. Just hours before they exited the Earth, each of the groups would perform exit interviews where they would record themselves talking about why they were doing this, why it was important, and what they expected on the other side. They are remarkably cheerful and happy considering what they all know they are about to do. Here are some highlights from those exit interviews.
Okay, we have Thirsody with us, and I believe that you chose the name Thirsody because you wanted to be reminded of your thirst for next level knowledge. Is that correct?
That's right. I know my vehicle's, or this vehicle that I'm wearing, is, pretty nervous, pretty scared. Some may say, well, boy, it's quite a irreversible step.
This isn't a trouble.
The thing about all these people, too, is that they seem like they're just dorks or weirdos, or like, those who are like at the outside of like regular society and people. You know what I mean? The oddballs. That's what most of these people seemed like. And I'm like, okay, it's cool they all found each other, but now they choose to do this? Shit, dude. I mean, I'm a bit of an oddball, off kilter, not regular person myself, but like, I couldn't see myself doing this shit. Not ever.
Circumstance. Don't take it as that. It's just a gateway, just a doorway.
Okay, thank you.
Now you're going to find this old crummy vehicle in a bunk someplace that I'll probably be watching when you check it out and observe your responses and your reaction when you look at these vehicles. And they're all nothing but containers that we've used and board for the short amount of time.
People in the world who thought that I had completely lost my marbles. They're not right.
Yep. Frickin' hell. Referring to this as a vehicle. My God, the depersoning these types of cults get into. What's funny is that that's like 100% of leftist propagandistic language and stuff. It's like, your body is just transitory and objective reality is actually purely subjective. And you can just make up whatever reality in your own head, and it applies to actual objective reality for everyone else. And how dare you don't acknowledge my objective reality inside my subjective head thoughts thing that I say. You bigot. That sounds exactly like them. And it's like, freaking serpent tongue and shit. Oh, we hit number 1 already. Jesus, we're already at number 1? It doesn't feel like it's been almost 2 hours. Ugh, I feel like I've been sitting down for like 15 minutes. Fug. How's everybody in the chat doing? Y'all doing okay? How y'all feeling so far? Check in the chat real quick. Oh, my back. Bug. Glad to see you're still with us, Commander Wolf. What do you think of the story so far? Anyway, while I wait for him to give an answer to that, let's get into number one. Commander Wolf, kind of indifferent. Makes my stomach churn a little, but outside of some queasiness, no opinion really. Okay. Just a little bit of cringe, but that's it, I'm guessing. All right.
In the late 1940s and 1950s, Reverend Jim
Your apathy level is quite advanced, my good sir.
Jones was known for his charitable works and his efforts towards desegregating Indiana. This earned him a devoted, loyal following, in particular from the African American community. In 1956, he purchased a church in Indiana and he named it the People's Temple, and all of his loyal followers went there and joined his congregation. During his fiery sermons, Jones emphasized helping the poor and lifting up the downtrodden, but despite his best efforts, raising money was proving to be a big challenge for him. Jones knew he was an amazing performer and he was really good on stage, and so instead of trying to do all the old school church fundraising techniques, he decided to do something a little more new school that played to his strengths, which was performance. And so what he started doing is advertising that he could perform miracles, live miracles on stage. And specifically what he said he could do is he could pull
Commander Wolf, well, they are dead and gone. Most of them are preventable accidents, but people in the world will do stupid shit if encouraged, or not in right state of mind. Yeah, that's very much the reality. And it's more true of your average lowest common denominator majority than some of us, it would seem. It's amazing that there aren't more of us like that. You know? It's amazing there isn't like, millions of us like that. And I mean millions as like, specifically that, not anything else, just that. It's like, well, shit.
cancer out of people. And he had this magic trick where he would go up to somebody that had cancer and he would appear to be pulling on them, and then he would pull out what looked like meat from this person. And it was meat. It was chicken meat. And he made it seem like he had removed the cancer, and people loved it. And his congregation swelled immediately and money was pouring in. And it was around this time that Jones began to realize the power of his own influence. He could make his followers believe anything he wanted. This power trip, though, over time would cause Jones to lose his grip on reality. And so when he began espousing fairly radical views, he didn't have anybody that was going to stand up and say, I don't know if you're right about that. Instead, he had a mass of people that basically blindly agreed with him. But when his social goals became so radical that
people think this kind of stuff was bad back then. Nowadays, we're cooked. Or what? Wait, which one is it they say, right? Is it we're cracked or we're cooked? I think it's we're cooked. Oh, give me a sec. Gotta fix something. There you go, honey. There you go. There you go. Your nice comfy bed. You big cutie. A big baby. A big cute baby. Ooh. You adorable baby. So lay down. Lay down. Wait. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Commander Wolf, cooked, I think all good. Cooked, yeah. It might be cooked. Compromiso. Mierda. A la madre de Dios. Let's continue.
They attracted Marxist leaders and violent leftist groups to the People's Temple. It was the one time that his followers said, okay, enough is enough. And there was a mass defection out of the People's Temple. And some of these defectors, when they left and had a chance to kind of look at the People's Temple for what it was, they realized it was more like a cult and that they had been brainwashed and that Jim Jones was a lunatic and anybody who followed him could potentially be in danger. And so they went to the media and told them about this. The media converges on the People's Temple, and all of a sudden it's this huge scandal that Jim Jones is the leader of a cult. And as stories started to break about Jim Jones being this awful person who was stealing from his members and abusing them and brainwashing them, he up and leaves for South America with hundreds of his most loyal followers, and they resettle in an area called Guyana that would eventually be called Jonestown. Life on the Jonestown compound was very grim. Not only did they have 10-hour workdays every day of the week, but food and water were extremely limited because they were so cut off from modern society.
I don't know. A 10-hour work day doesn't seem very bad. I mean, I've done really, really hard work for well over 10 hours. We're talking 15, 20. In some cases, in some places for certain reasons, you'd go like 48 hours straight, get like maybe an hour nap in between. But honestly, just 10 hours a day? Shit, sign me up.
That the only way they could get any sort of resources was through haggling over a shortwave radio that usually didn't even work. So they're totally cut off, they have very few supplies, and then at the end of their 10-hour workday, it was mandatory for all members to come into this main area underneath this big scaffolding where Jim Jones would get up on stage and he would rant and rave about various government conspiracies that were going to befall them. He would excoriate defectors and talk about how they needed to round them up and make examples of them. And if you stepped out of line, even just a little bit, you could find yourself locked inside of a coffin or trapped at the bottom of a well as a form of punishment. Jones was already spiraling out of control, but some health issues led him to take a daily, near lethal dose of amphetamines and sedatives that made him a total lunatic. Suddenly, his nighttime speeches just weren't enough, and he began pumping these crazy speeches 24/7 over loudspeakers all over the camp. One defector said the speeches were centered on this idea that back in the United States, the government was systematically rounding up African Americans and sending them to concentration camps, and it was only a matter of time before they came here.
Sounds like current modern day left-wing propaganda. Ain't that funny?
And took any of the African Americans here into
Isn't that a little quinky-dink?
captivity. And since the majority of the People's Temple were of African American descent, This was terrifying. U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan had been keeping close tabs on the People's Temple ever since the news broke about Jim Jones kind of being a hack and a maniac. And when they went to South America, he just felt like no one's really checking in on them, and I'm concerned for the well-being of the people that are there. And so on November 18th, 1978, Ryan, along with 18 other people, flew to Guyana to talk to Jim Jones and to make sure that everything was okay. When he arrived, he was expecting it to be kind of in disrepair and be this chaotic scene, but it wasn't. The camp was maintained, people were well-dressed, polite. It seemed like a happy and healthy community with a few hundred people there. And he actually went to Jim Jones and says, you know, it looks like you got a good thing going here. But Jones, in his totally delusional state, believed Ryan was being sent by the US government to round up the members and to ship them into concentration camps. And so as soon as the congressman left the camp and was headed back to the airport, Jones sent a security team after them, and they shot and killed Leo Ryan along with 4 others. While that massacre is going on, Jones goes over to the middle of the camp where he normally gives his nighttime speeches, and he calls all 900 plus members to the middle of camp to listen to him. He turns on a recording device, he picks up his microphone, and he delivers a speech that would come to be known as the death tape. His famous first line of this speech is, "I've tried my best to give you a good life." And you can hear the crowd erupt with cheers as he says this, and what listeners of this tape can't see is what's being unveiled at the same time. Right next to Jim Jones is this silver cauldron of this sickly purple liquid, and next to it are about 900 cups. The next day, authorities are outside the gate of Jonestown, and they're getting ready to head into Jonestown to confront Jim Jones about his connection to the murder of Congressman Ryan and the 4 others. And they're loading their guns, they're getting ready for what's bound to be massive resistance from this crazy cult leader and his followers. And as they're making their way down the road and the camp comes into view, they notice that it's eerily quiet and they don't see anybody moving around. And as they're walking through some of the high grass, someone trips and falls, and they think they've stepped on a log. When they stand up and look down, they notice that it's a dead person, and they scream out, and then everyone's looking around, and they notice that all over the ground in front of them are hundreds and hundreds of dead bodies. There's more.
You know why I feel this one so intimately? Because this is the same type of shit I've run into overseas. Parts of Africa, South America, some parts of Asia, the Middle East. Brother. It gets to me. It does. It still does. You would have thought I'd be numb to it. I'd be more calloused. To an extent, I think I actually am, but it still gets to me. There's nothing like, helping out a family from the Taliban, being forced to abandon that family because orders from some fuckwit officer who's like, okay, our job's completely, totally done here now. We can just leave, and I want to go back to the fob where it's safe. And then coming back and finding that the whole family was massacred inside their home. Fug. It still gets to me.
More bodies than they can possibly count. The previous night, that purple liquid that was revealed to the crowd after Jim Jones begins his speech was Kool-Aid mixed with cyanide. And over the course of several hours, and it's all
And thus comes the saying, don't drink the Kool-Aid.
recorded on the death tape, he encourages his members to come up and die with dignity and drink the Kool-Aid. However, if you didn't drink the Kool-Aid or didn't want to drink the Kool-Aid, like many of the 300 children, their parents would make them, or the armed guards would come over and they would inject them with it. And after everybody's died, Jim Jones doesn't even drink from the Kool-Aid. He ends up shooting himself. I've decided to only include a very small portion of the death tape because so much of it is just, it's heartbreaking, it's distressing, and it should be something that you decide you want to listen to. It should not be thrust upon you.
So yeah, y'all ready to listen to it? I'm guessing that's a yes, so let's go. Real audio of the death tape.
How very much I've tried my best to give you the good life. It was said by the greatest of prophets from time immemorial, no man takes my life from me, I lay my life down. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace. We've been so betrayed. We have been so terribly betrayed. Take the portion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly, because we are not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act. We can't go back. They won't leave us alone. They're now going back to tell more lies, which means more congressmen, and there's no way we can survive.
Thank you
God, I hate how genial that voice sounds.
so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of today's episode in the comments. And remember, we have hundreds of videos for you to binge right now. But if you're looking for a recommendation from me of that one video that's worth your time, well, it's this one right here.
All right, well, that was that. So, a Discord request from Peekaboo Sue. You're welcome. Thank you for the recommendation. But yeah, of course I liked it. It's Mrballen. Here's the link for the chat too, in case people don't see it in the stream thingamajig. Friggin' A-Bub. That got to me. Ugh. They kind of always do, still. You know, even with everything I've been through. That being said, what did you think? You let me know in the comments down below. Or in the chat. While I'm still live on this thing, because the next thing I'm going to go do is play some, I don't know, Battlefield or something. That being said, again, what did you think? Let me know in the comments down below. All right, you know what time it is. Be good. Be safe. Make a life for yourselves. Don't compromise safety and security for nobody and nothing. Death and disaster is only a second away. Do what you can today. And I'll see you all in the next one. I'm Badger 7 Actual, a formerly homeless veteran. Blast Cat Badger, out. I'm not ending the stream entirely. I'm just ending this one because this is the Mrballen video request thingy.